Pythagorean theorem. So a little bit about the Pythagorean theorem. It only works with right triangles. And so here we kind of have some terms that you need to be aware of. In a right triangle, the side opposite the right angle is called the hypotenuse. We call that side C. Okay, the hypotenuse always corresponds to side C. The other two sides are called the legs. Here they have lengths A and B. It doesn't matter which one is A, which one is B, just as long as each of those are touching the right angle. So the Pythagorean theorem states that in a right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs equals the square of the length of the hypotenuse. So in other words, what the Pythagorean theorem states is exactly what I have written here in big print. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. This is something that will follow you through probably for the rest of your life. Okay, this is actually one of the most widely used theorems by anyone. Okay, so the Pythagorean theorem only works with right triangles. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some basic triangles first, and then we're going to look at some word problems that will utilize the Pythagorean theorem, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Okay? So I think it should be a pretty straightforward lesson. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start by looking at an example. Okay, the first example I'm going to look at says the following. Find the value of x. So if you're a little unsure of yourself, what you could do is you could label if you wanted. You could do A, B, and C just so that you know. Or you could just recognize that 7 and 13 are the legs. So 7 squared plus 13 squared equals x squared. Now if I calculate that, I get 49 plus 169. That's going to equal x squared, right? What do you end up getting when you take 49 plus 169?
218.
218. How do you undo a square? Square root. Now normally whenever we undo a square, we take both the positive and the negative. We don't have to take the negative here. Why? You can't have a negative side. Okay, so what is the square root of 218?
14.76.
14.76? There you go. That's it. That's all you're doing. That's the Pythagorean theorem in a nutshell. So we're going to go ahead and look at another one. Okay? And if you look at this one, what's different versus the problem before?
B squared.
Yeah, you have to find b squared. So in other words, I've got 4 squared plus x squared equals 15 squared. 4 squared we know is 16. 15 squared we know is 225. Okay, so now to solve this, I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. And when I do that, I have 209. So now, in order to solve that, take the square root. 14.46. Now, just a little bit about the sides. Some of the things you're going to notice. The two legs are always going to be the two shortest sides. The hypotenuse will always be the longest side. So the hypotenuse will always be the longest side. All right, I want you to do this one quickly for me. Find the value of x. And then we've got 2 more problems after this we're going to look at. So find the value of x.
17. Katie, you have a calculator.
I just did it.
Yeah, I know.
So what did you get when you solved this?
15.
Perfect. X equals 15. This is actually what we call a Pythagorean triple. A Pythagorean triple is a set of 3 numbers that form a right triangle. 8, 15, 17 is 1. The most famous Pythagorean triple, does anybody know what that is? 3, 4, 5. Okay. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at this, and we'll talk more about Pythagorean triples and all that later on. Just kind of a little introduction there. So if you notice this, it says, how high up on the wall will a 20-foot ladder touch if the foot of the ladder is placed 5 feet from the wall? Now real quick, let's think about that.
Must be 6.
Remember what I said, the hypotenuse is always the longest side, right? So is h going to be smaller than 20 or larger than 20?
Smaller.
Smaller. Okay, so to find this, Pythagorean theorem, h squared plus 5 squared equals 20 squared. So I have h squared plus 25 equals 400. What does h squared equal? 375. So now when you take the square root on your calculator, what do you get the height to be?
19.36.
What?
19.36.
19.36. The label will be feet. So, lesson learned here. If you got a 20-foot high house, you're not going to be able to buy a 20-foot ladder and get up it. Okay, just probably not going to happen. So you're going to have to buy something a little bigger there. Okay, so here we go. It says find the area of the rectangular rug if the width is 12 feet and the diagonal measures 20 feet. So now what we need to do is find L. Once we find L, we're going to multiply the length and the width. So to find L, I know that L squared plus 12 squared equals 20 squared. Correct? So you should get L squared plus 144 equals 400. What does L squared equal?
256.
256. So what does L come out to be?
16.
16. So what do we know about 12, 16, and 20? It's another Pythagorean triple. Very good. And so now, in order to find the area of this rug, I'm going to take 16 times 12. What is 16 times 12?
192.
192. Label will be feet squared.
How do you know if it's a triple?
It'll just be
They come out
3
even.
numbers that come out perfectly. There are no decimal parts to it. Okay, so there are no decimal parts. So like 3, 4, 5. In this case, 12, 16, 20, which is actually a variation of 3, 4, 5. But like I said, we'll talk more about that later. This was just kind of a little introduction. And so what you need to do for me for tomorrow, pretty straightforward, I need you to do 1 through 16 on page 481. Okay, 1 through 16 on page 481. Now you're going to notice some of these diagrams are a little more in depth. You're going to have to look at them, but I think you should be able to handle it just fine.